Hello and welcome back. Today we are here with the very exuberant Dustin Watten. Thank you for being here.
Very humbled, very honored to be here.
You are an American volleyball player, member of the United States men's national volleyball team, World Cup champion, have won numerous bronze, silver, and gold medals throughout your career, have over 11 years as a professional playing overseas. You are an Adidas athlete, a Bundesliga champion, currently playing in the Polish league, and have earned the title of Best Libero in the league. Please walk us through your journey of how you got into the sport of volleyball, what a libero is, and when you went pro.
So libero is free in Italian. And it was a change actually recently, I think maybe like 15 years ago. And so I only go in and out of the back row. So volleyball players, you think 6'7", 6'8", 6'9", maybe even taller, and they jump. I'm 6 feet maybe, and I don't jump. And so I'm limited to the back row for the benefit of our team. And so I specialize in receiving the serve from the other side. And then I also specialize in defending an attack. And so I'm just kind of like the little guy. It's like, if you think about like Pong, it's like I'm like the 40 version of like the things hitting the ball.
Okay.
And so pretty much my task is like to not let the ball hit the floor. And if I can, put it as accurately as possible into the setter's hands. And the setter will make the second touch and they'll set the hitter.
And do you have to serve it differently than other people?
So no serving for me.
No. Do you have to hit it differently from other people?
Yeah, that's a good question. So if I contact the ball and push it over the net, I cannot jump. I have to stay in the back row and I have to stay on the floor. Whereas anyone else on the other court can jump and hit it.
You can never jump?
I cannot jump and put the ball over the net. So I can jump and like pass the ball to my teammates.
Okay.
Yeah. So a lot of my journey, a lot of my growth has come through low, kind of darker times. And so I never wanted to play volleyball. My dad was a coach, and I was always asked if I wanted to play volleyball. Growing up in Long Beach, more of an urban environment, I was like, no, it's a girl's sport. I'm going to play basketball, or maybe soccer, but I didn't want to play volleyball, that was for sure. And so going from middle school to high school, all my friends went to one school, and I went to the other school. It was almost kind of like the preppy school, and I really didn't fit in. Pretty much for my entire time there, I didn't fit in. And so I was really trying to kind of find myself. And how it worked out is in the winter they had soccer, and in the spring they had volleyball. And so I played on the soccer team. I had teammates, but not necessarily friends. And so my dad asked me once again if I wanted to play volleyball in the spring, because the varsity coach asked him. He was a teacher there. And once again, I was like, no, it's a girl's sport, I want to play. But I heard kind of whispers that a lot of my teammates from the soccer team were going to go out for the volleyball team. And it was just kind of a last-ditch effort to like have some friends. And so I really wanted nothing to do with volleyball, but at that time I really didn't have any friends. I was, I guess you could say, like a loner in high school. I would find myself eating lunch in my dad's classroom rather than in the quad. And so it was just, this thought of maybe I can turn these teammates into friends. And so I tried out for the volleyball team.
And then you got accepted?
Not necessarily.
Tell me about it. So what happened? So you tried out for it?
So I tried out for the volleyball team, and I made it. My dad was the coach, and so...
Oh, your dad was the coach of this one that you tried out for?
Yeah,
okay.
So I made the freshman team. It wasn't a big deal. Okay. And then going forward, once high school was over, I was like, I love this. And so the next opportunity was club. And for club soccer, it's pretty difficult, especially in California, to make a team. But for volleyball, I made it, and I was like, oh my gosh, I'm amazing. Little did I know now, it's like if you have money, you'll make a team. And so after that as well, we were accepted to play in this event called Junior Olympics. And I didn't know what that was, but I was like, wow, I'm so good. Junior Olympics, my first year playing. And once again, like I didn't really realize, but if you could pay money, you could go to Junior Olympics, which was this nationwide event. I don't know exactly. But
like a couple $100 or something like that, or like thousands?
Thousands for a team to enter, for 6-on-6 indoor.
Okay.
And then, I got there, and the team ended up playing in the lowest division, and we got last. I always remember losing to a team from Maryland. And sitting on the bench, I was like really grumpy, frustrated. I actually got benched for having a bad attitude. And I realized 3 things. I was like, 1, like I'm really bad at this sport. I'm not that good. Definitely not as good as I thought I was. 2, I love the sport. And 3, with this kind of like arrogance or stubbornness, like I wanted to be better. And so that kind of began my career, my journey.
And then so When from that journey did you become pro? Like how long does it take from when you're in high school to when can you become pro when you go to college? How does that work?
Yeah, so it's really rare. There's some guys that can go pro, maybe their second or third year in college, but it's like one out of every 10 years, as it takes a lot of maturity physically and technically to go pro. Because a lot of athletes in Europe, they start playing when they're 18. And how the rules work, it's a little different than American sports, is each league has kind of a quota for foreigners. And so if you're a foreigner, you're going to be the best player on the team, if not the best player on the league, or expected. So a lot of players will have to play high school, play college, and then go overseas. My journey took a little longer as I had to wait a full year and I didn't have a contract. And then eventually I got a contract to play in one of the lowest leagues, and that was Finland. After my senior year at Long Beach State, I was an All-American. I was invited to come in and train the national team. And I trained, and I just didn't really know what to do. I didn't get an offer, and I was bummed. I didn't have a pro team. All my teammates were playing professionally overseas, and I had to stay a year in California. I coached youth volleyball to make enough money and just kind of train by myself. But it was actually one of the best things that happened, because my first year was in Finland. I had no idea what Finland was. Like, what's Finland? Is it a country? Is it a city? And I got there, and you realize that it's a place that's very dark, very cold, very contrasting to my hometown of Long Beach, California. And a lot of American players will make their first or second year in Finland, and they'll quickly stop because they focus on the scarcity or the lack, right? My family's not here, my friends aren't here, it's dark, it's cold. The people are quite cold if you don't take the time to know them. But for me, not having a contract that first year, going in the second year, it was just so much abundance. I never thought of the cold. I never thought of the darkness. I was just so grateful that this team had entrusted me with a contract. And so every day, it was like the best day ever, because I got to live my dream. It was like kind of like the old man story. Like, I had to run like 5 to 6 minutes to practice, because I was too cold to walk. But I got to run to practice. It wasn't I had to walk. I didn't have a car. And so because I didn't have that contract the first year, I think I was able to thrive in Finland, because there was just so much gratitude for actually having a contract.
Yeah. You went from finishing last in the Junior Olympics to then finishing first. How did that happen?
Yeah.
You left that out.
Good research, yeah. So it was just a grind for me. And once again, it was like, my personal preference wasn't to get in last, but by getting last, I was naturally thrown into this growth mindset, right? Talk about growth mindset, fixed mindset, where we're just focused on the outcome. Something that we don't necessarily have complete control over. I love Stoicism, this old philosophy stemming from Greece, and this thought of the dichotomy of control. There's some things that we have complete control over, some things that we don't have complete control over. Most of the times we think we have complete control over the outcomes, or even if we play well, right? And so I didn't play well, the team didn't play well, we got last place. And then from there, I just realized the only way to go was up. And so I kept on losing, I kept on failing, but I realized I was getting better, because I wasn't getting worse. When I first started playing, I was the worst in the nation. And so it just allowed this foundation for me to fail with confidence and continue failing and failing and failing. Where I think a lot of athletes nowadays, they're too focused on the outcome. If I play good, if I win.
It's a lot of pressure.
Or, it's kind of ingrained to them, whether they know it or not, but parents, like, if an athlete wins, it's different reactions when they lose, right? If they win, great job. If they lose, and athlete consensus. And so they start materializing this thought of, I'm a winner and my parents act like this. I'm a loser and my parents act like this. And maybe there's a couple times they lose in a row, but if they continue to lose, they don't feel whole, right?
Yeah.
And so I was just so lucky that at a young age, I was like the worst. And on top of that, my parents would always tell me they were proud of how I competed, or they were proud of how I didn't compete, which is something that's completely in my control, right? How I compete is my decision. And so that was able to push me through, and I just kept on losing. But I played more than anyone because I wasn't afraid to lose. I wasn't afraid to play against great competition. I wasn't afraid to play against adults, where a lot of people were playing against their age in beach, something like this. And so that was pretty much all I did that summer. I just played beach with my dad. He had 2 knee surgeries, but he can still move around. We just lost to a bunch of old guys until I was able to get a partner the next year. But every moment I just played volleyball. I touched against the wall. I taught my brother how to play. When he got bored, I'd hit it off the wall. When it got too dark, I would go inside, hit the ball off the wall as well. Wow. And I just believed I could always get a little bit better. Never really focusing too much on being on the best team or being the best player, but just always improving. And I was so grateful I got that last place, and that eventually led my senior year in college getting a gold medal at the same tournament.
Wow. And what was the time space? Three years?
That was my freshman year to my senior year.
That's amazing. You just became obsessed with it, and you let go of fear.
Obsessed, I just became so dedicated and curious. I just always believed there was a better way. I could always be a little bit better. If I worked hard, I think I could be a little better. If I played all the time, I think I could be a little bit better. If I played beach and indoor, I could probably be a little bit better. So I was just always curious for a better tomorrow, and I committed to the work that had to be done today.
Nice. When did you go vegan, and how did it affect your performance? You were told to stop speaking about veganism at one point, and why do you think people tried suppressing this?
Yeah. So veganism was completely by chance. It was actually I read Rich Roll's book, who I watched your episode with, and so going from my second year to my third year, my second year I was kind of having some trouble. Same team in Finland, and will wasn't enough. I wasn't technically that good. I wasn't as athletic as other players, and the writing was on the wall. I wasn't going to get a next contract, and so I did the craziest thing I could have thought of at the time, and I called my mom and I was like, "Can you send me some books?"
Yeah.
Because at that time I was just kind of like this really hard mentality where it's like, if I'm in the gym, I'm going to work hard. If I'm in the weight room, I'm going to work hard. If I'm partying, I'm going to party hard. And willpower was not enough. So that was the first kind of catalyst for being more intentional, being more mindful. So at that time, I had my mom send me a bunch of books on mindset, and started reading it, and I started to take more responsibility and hold myself accountable for things I was doing outside the court, rather than just assuming working hard inside the court would be enough. And so from that summer, going to my French team, I was able to sign a contract in France. I went to Barnes & Nobles and grabbed a bunch of books, just anything that could be inspirational. And I saw Rich Roll's book, and I forgot the tagline, but it was something like overcoming middle-aged, being the fittest man in the world.
Yeah.
I was like, okay, this is a motivational book. I didn't look at anything into it. And so on the plane, read a little bit of one book, and then finally got to Rich's book. And I started reading it. And by the time I put it down, there was about 30 minutes left until we arrived in France, and the book was done.
Whoa.
And so the first thought was like, oh my gosh, I just read a whole book. I was like, what's wrong with me? And then the second was like, am I going to go vegan? I was like, I didn't know any vegans. I didn't know any vegetarians at the time. It was completely in contrast to what I believed, because as a young athlete, I was really skinny, really weak, really slow. And I worked really hard to put on weight, really hard in the weight room. And I believe there's a clear correlation to protein. You find protein in animals, eating those animals, or whey protein shakes, and then you get strong. And so everything I read in Rich's book was completely contrary. But his story was eerily so aligned with mine that it just captivated me. And at that moment, it was just like, well, I'm so passionate about growing, so curious about growing. And I started to realize that there was a lot of growth that I could achieve outside the court with different choices. And so for sure, I was going to be the only plant-based athlete. Will it work? I don't know. But I definitely have this unique edge. And so I kind of went into vegan purgatory in the south of France. But I was just committed to it and curious to see if it would have an effect on my energy, on my recovery, like it did for Rich. Because for Rich's story, he was 39. For me, I was 25. And I was like, wow, what could happen to me at 25? And so I just came up with just this abundant consciousness, and it was really difficult, but I just stayed with it. And the goal was just to go 3 months plant-based, and 3 months has turned into 9 years.
I love it. Yeah. And then why did somebody say don't speak about veganism?
Yeah, I think one thing I've learned going vegan is just more compassion, right? And when I first went vegan, it's like, you believe it's sincere, but it's like a false ego trip, right? Where you're like, everyone wake up, you need to go vegan, for performance, for the animals, stuff like this. And when people speak about it, against it, you're like, you don't know what you're talking about. And so for now, when people speak about what I'm doing, or in the past when they've spoken against it or told me I shouldn't do it, I just try to have compassion for their ignorance, and not maybe like a conscious ignorance, but just like maybe
They're not knowing.
maybe they were taught by like a school system that was written by the dairy industry, and it's difficult, right? Because it was something for me where I tried it in France, and I came back to the national team, and they're like, "No, you shouldn't do this. Like, no, you can't." They were like, "No, you can't do this." And I was like, "I just did it for 8 months, and I feel good." And it was like I didn't have any ties at that time to like the ethical or maybe the environment. It was just purely on performance. And I'm like, like I'm just going purely on performance, and I feel great. I feel lighter. I feel stronger. I'm able to work more. And they told me it was impossible, that I shouldn't do it. And I was just like, I think I'm going to take the call on this one, because at the end of the day, it's my job. And so if I'm digging my grave, then that's on me, right? And so in a sense, it's their right to have this vision, this perception. But that's when I have to have my discernment too, where it's like, well, what are the benefits I've had? What are the costs? How does it go against, And every time I kind of weigh veganism against my choices in the past, it's just not even possible. And so, I don't know. I have so much confidence, and with that confidence, I think I just have to have compassion for those that speak against it, or even against myself personally. And it's difficult, but I think it's a beautiful challenge.
Yeah, I like that. Next question. Walk us through what you eat day to day and when you are competing. You eat predominantly raw. Can you explain how you figured out this was best for your performance and energy levels?
Great question. So when I'm overseas, we don't have a domestic league in America. And so usually right about now, like May through September is the national team season. So I'll compete with the national team, train. If I'm lucky, selected to travel with them. And then about September up until April is the professional league. And so when I'm overseas, it's about 7 to 8 months of the same routine. And so I love to experiment, change things. And so when I first went vegan, I had no idea what I was doing. But like the stereotype, like I need protein. And so I was eating a lot of beans, like just as much protein as I can find. I have a huge like bowl of oats in the morning because I was like so concerned, right? And there was a couple times where I just didn't want to go shopping, and I had to cook a little differently, not as much. I just started feeling like, oh, this is like better on my digestion. I still feel good. I'm still carrying my weight. And that kind of opened me up to different ways. And so the 2 years after that, I started hearing more about this like raw till 5 or 6, whatever it may be. And I was like, okay, I'll just try it. And I started incorporating more smoothies and more salads. Now I just really love smoothies because you can pretty much blend a salad. And it wasn't until like having a couple like really cold winter days where I would have a Buddha bowl for lunch. And I eat it generally a lot because we'll have a morning train. And then when I go to that evening train, it's like, oh, like I don't really like feel so like flexible, have so much energy. And then I just backtrack because pretty much every day is the same. I was like, well, did I have a hard lift yesterday? What it was? And it was like 3 or 4 days like where it was like this. And it was always, I had a cooked meal and lunch. And so
Interesting.
I really love starting the day out with a big green smoothie bowl, and then maybe like a more berry smoothie or berry bowl and lunch. For a snack, maybe I'll have some fruit. I like to bake these little raw treats out of dates, oats, and nuts.
Nice.
And then for dinner, I'll usually do a Buddha bowl with some avocado on top. I keep it really basic, just whole foods as much as possible.
That sounds amazing and not basic.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel pretty basic. But yeah, I mean, my Buddha bowl, it's something, maybe it's like rice, beans, sweet potatoes, some broccoli, zucchini, avocado, maybe some coconut milk and season it with turmeric, curry, cumin.
Nice.
I just keep it really basic. Just try to rely on whole foods as close as they are to the original form.
Nice. Do you take supplements, and if so, which ones?
So usually in season, I'll take a little creatine, B12, and just because I'm like really dorky on sleep and just optimizing, I like to take mushrooms, lion's mane, chaga, reishi, turkey tail, cordyceps, and then...
They help you sleep?
All throughout the day, I like to take, say, cordyceps before lifting, turkey tail, chaga throughout the day, lion's mane, maybe if I'm working on something outside, in between practices, before bed, lion's mane, reishi, and then also magnesium before bed.
Nice. Can you share the story of the son of the Portuguese cleaner that you met in your locker room that gave you his watch? What did this teach you, and how did it impact your life?
Yeah, you've done your research on me.
I did.
So yeah, I played in Brazil 1 year. That was kind of like my big breakout as a professional, to play in Brazilian league. Like, wow, like Brazil, it's number 2, maybe the number 3 now, because now like mixed martial arts, but it's up there with soccer. Yeah, it was a very different culture than I was used to. Like very aggressive, like iron sharpens iron, and I really wasn't ready for that mentally and emotionally, especially because I didn't speak the language. And in Brazil, you speak Portuguese, and that's pretty much it. And so I had a really tough time. Again, it was one of these moments where like it was so tough that I was able to kind of evolve and go into meditation, but it's another story. And so the one person that like always made my day better was this cleaner in our locker room. Always like a big like bon dia, like good day, and it just made me so happy. It made me feel so loved because training with the guys, traveling with the guys, I felt so shallow and so incomplete because I wasn't playing, I think, to their expectation. And I just felt like so insecure. And again, I just didn't feel whole. I felt broken. But she always made me feel whole, and I was just always so happy to be nice of her. So there's one game where I actually wasn't playing. I was sitting out. I was with her son and with my broken Portuguese, English. She had like this kind of like a swap meet Puma watch. And I was like, I love your watch, like muito legal, like it's really cool. He's like, oh, thanks. And just like trying to be nice, right?
Yeah.
Because they were so cool. She had 2 teenagers, and they would come in and clean the rooms, and you would think like, oh, they'd be so embarrassed, like professional athletes, see them cleaning, but they were just like so happy, and like they had so much like love in their heart. And so after that game, 2 days later, he came to me with his mom, and they're like, we want you to have the watch. And like my son wants you to have the watch. I'm like, in my mind, I'm like, come on, I can have like 1,000 of these watches. And like for her salary, I mean, like one time I think we gave her like something like a $50 bonus, like, and that was like something like she made for a week. And I was like, come on, like I can't like take the watch. And she actually got mad at me. She's like, no, like he wants you to take the watch. Please take the watch. And I was like, okay. And I took it. And then after that, like really that was like the big change in my mindset. And it was just like, there's a better way to do it. Because at that time I was playing with one of like the most accomplished player in like Brazilian history. And not saying anything bad about him, but he had everything. He had like a really expensive car, beautiful wife, beautiful children. He was like more or less the mayor of the city. Everyone loved him on TV almost every day, doing an interview, and he was so miserable. And I was like, I want everything that guy has. Like, I want the fame, I want the money, I want like the social status. I want to be like the guy that's winning medals for my country. But then I saw like he wasn't happy, because I correlate all this success, all this external success, right? Or maybe like externally successful, like I say this as happiness, where like the joy is internal. They had that joy, right? They didn't need anything outside of them. They already had that joy. He was consistently seeking. And like with Stoicism, we talk about this as the hedonic adaptation, where you're finding these sensory pleasures, but you just keep on adapting to them, adapting. You're consistently seeking, but you can have like this, the pure pleasures, where it's like love, compassion, volunteer, and this deeper sense of joy that they had. And at the same time, I mentioned I started meditating, and I realized it's just like this path that I'm building for myself is not the path I want to go to. Because I believe that there was salvation at the end of it. If I was successful enough, if I had a beautiful wife and beautiful children and this, that, like then I would be happy. But like it was like a choice. I can be happy and grateful at this moment right now. And so that pretty much just changed my path, this path of like seeking to abundance, and then also with that abundance to being of service to others.
How so? What did you start to do? Did you start to volunteer and stuff?
Started to volunteer, started to reach out more, started to speak more to teams, and just using my platform. Like whether I deserve it or not, there's a lot of athletes that look up to me, and I really enjoy speaking. When I speak, being clear to share my failures and being vulnerable with them, the setbacks and the roadblocks, so they can kind of link and see the same things. Because so many people DM me or write me, and they feel that they're the only ones that have this problem, or they're the only ones that feel anxious, they're the only ones that feel insecure.
Yeah.
Because our society is so good right now is masking, right? Showing just one aspect of our life. And so I enjoy just being vulnerable and showing athletes my failures and roadblocks and how I've gotten out of them. And there's more inside of them where they can access this true power. But from there, I started reading more and just taking a different lens to life rather than this seeking, more so, how can I give? How can I be of value?
I love that. That's really special. You talk about how you once were playing and competing with fear, shame, self-sabotage, and anxiety. Where were these feelings coming from, and how did you overcome them?
So yeah, I think a lot of the insecurity came from high school. And I remember there was a couple times where we're at the dinner table and I had a younger brother and we'd always tease each other, but he would tease me a couple times and be like, well, you don't have any friends. And it just like really kind of like was like a cold dagger. And it was like true, like in high school, I really didn't have any friends. And I think, kind of doing some shadow work where there's a lot of things I do or quick responses where I want to make sure that I'm of value to someone or I'm fitting in or people like me. And so in Brazil, that kind of like came crashing. Like I saw really deeply that shadow where I want to be loved, I want to be liked. And as an athlete, I want to be good so others like me, right? Everything's good and you win, people love you. They love giving you high fives and hugs. But when you lose, it's like, you're okay, like get out of here. And so in Brazil, I really felt that like that hurt. And so I think a lot of that hurt transitioned into shame for the next year, where I would make plays where I wasn't at my best self, and I felt I had to shame myself, attack myself, before I gave the opportunity or the window for coaches or a teammate to do it. And so by hurting myself, I at least had authority on who or what was said. And it wasn't necessary, right? My teammates there were very supportive. They wanted me to do well. But I was just so scared and hurt and insecure on the inside that I took the first dagger and stabbed myself. And so I speak a lot about shame, and that I don't think it really has any place in sport or in life because it's so debilitating.
Yeah.
And I realized, once again, like, if I kept on playing with this shame, I was going to get a contract. And so I kind of flipped it around and I was like, what's the opposite of shame? It was like arrogance. And so I just started playing with more arrogance, like I'm the best. Or it's like, if something bad happened, I was just like, well, it's lucky. Like, give me the ball, I'm the best. If something bad happened, well, it's lucky. And so I just try to flip it. And now, more mindfulness, I just kind of come back to the present moment where I don't have to be so arrogant or so cocky, but it's just the ability to return to the present moment. And knowing that there's going to be a lot of anxiety and possible shame, focusing on the past or the ambiguity of a scary future, and knowing those things exist and they're kind of pulling at me, and just return to the breath, or more specifically, the sensation of the breath coming in and out of my nose.
So when you got cocky, do you think that speaking words into existence was the powerful thing rather than the cockiness? Do you think like saying I am the best created you to believe that you were the best, and then you started acting like that?
Yeah, I was like, sometimes maybe I'd mutter, but like in my head, I'm like, and this is not the correct language I use, but most of the actions I have, I'm like receiving the ball, right? So I'd be like, serve me the freaking ball. Like, I freaking dare you, like serve me. And I wanted it. I was like manifesting it. Or it's like, what's the quote? It's like, whether you believe you can or can't, you're right.
Yep.
And so with that shame, I was like, oh, don't serve me. Like, oh my gosh, like I passed the ball so bad. And I was just so focused on negativity and scarcity that, I'm setting myself up for failure. But it's that like, give me the ball. I want it. Please serve me. Like just in this scene, like I got this. And then just every time coming back to that. Because as an athlete, or we can say like in basketball, say you make the first 5 shots. The sixth opportunity, you're so confident, right? Like, give me the ball, I'm on fire. But what happens if you miss the first 5 shots? Maybe, you just barely miss, but on that 6th shot, where's your headspace at? Do you still want it? Are you second guessing yourself? Are you gonna make that pass? And so for me, with my meditation practice, my mindfulness practice, it all comes back to being present. And maybe I can't be 100% confidence, focus, or clear, but maybe 99, 98, 97. And I think that's what separates me from a lot of players I compete against that are much more technically sound or have been playing professionally much longer than me. I started playing pro when I was 24 and at a really low league. I just played my first like high league until I was 27. The guys I play at now, they started playing professional when they're 18 in some of the best leagues in the world, 17. And so I think my strength is just being present longer and riding the waves and knowing that everything is impermanent and that the most important ball is the next ball, rather than being lost in the past or just the ambiguous future of what could go wrong. I'm just thinking about what could go right.
I want to talk about your lists.
Yeah.
You started making lists. Tell me about these lists and how did they help you?
Yeah, so the list is probably one of the best things that happened to my career and to myself as a person. Because when I'm overseas, it's 8 months, and there's a lot of things that can happen in 8 months, and there's a lot of things that can't happen. And for the first, I would say, 4 or 5 years of my career at the national team, I didn't do anything. I was in the gym almost as a volunteer coach. I'd wipe the floors, call the lines, kind of like a volunteer coach, a volunteer referee. But I just wanted to make sure I was in the gym with the guys, right? And so I didn't train, I didn't compete, I didn't travel, but when I had those 8 months overseas, like that's when I can grow. And it was like this window for me to grow way above than what other guys were doing. And so in that second year, I started reading books about mindset. I read this idea about a list, creating a list that kind of like micro tasks that aligns with your values and priorities, whatever they may be. And so at first it was just really simple. It was like, I need to start stretching. I want to work out every day. At the time I was playing a lot of computer games. So I was like, I don't really want to limit the computer games, but like, I'll do like some push-ups in between. And then the fourth was like, I'll start reading a little bit, just a little bit each day, because I was so focused on volleyball. I wasn't really growing as a person. And that's expanded out to more or less 24 things now, or small tasks.
Okay.
And it has anything to do with meditation, not eating processed food, visualization, journaling to start the day, journaling to end it, stretching, meditating before bed, maybe taking my supplements, getting extra work, whatever it can do, because I want to be as efficient as possible to make sure I'm growing into the person that I say I can be, or I want to be, right? I want to be the best athlete possible. I want to take care of my body.
Yeah.
And I want to make sure that I'm continuing to grow as a person, because the more I grow, the more I can give, right? The whole story about like filling your cup first and letting it overflow. And so how it works is I have like Monday through Sunday, and then I have all the things down. And once I do the task, I check it off. And so the lower score, the better. And I post it on my wall. And so I hold myself accountable, because there's been at times where, I really haven't done it, or I'm like playing a game myself, right? So Monday and Tuesday doesn't go well. I just won't do it for the rest of the week.
Don't you like highlight them? I've seen these in some of your interviews where you highlight them, and that's how you check them off.
I highlight them, and then a couple years ago when I was playing the French league, it was after I won the World Cup, and I came to France like big time, like World Cup champion. I thought really highly of myself. The team wasn't great. The coach was really unstable. And it was just a mess. We ended up going 3-23. And when we're around of 1-19, I called my agent. I was like, I'm done. Like, get me out of here. Because at that time, again, talking about as happiness outside of us, right? My long-term girlfriend and I broke up. Okay, I'm sad. The coach was a jerk. I'm sad. The team wasn't doing well. I'm sad. I didn't have any friends. I was grumpy. I didn't like the city. It was even raining. Like the weather was suck, right? It was just always like right above freezing, but not necessarily, and always raining. So everything outside of me that like previously giving me happiness was not there. And I remember like putting down the phone with the agent, just like fuming. And I was like, can I be happy? Can I be happy right here? And I was like, I can't. And I was like, I have to escape it. And I think that's what I see right now a lot with our culture. It's like, if things outside of us aren't going well, then we yell, we scream, we try to escape, we repress it, we run away, right? Instead of going within. And luckily the next day, I went to a cafe and I pulled out this book I had, Meditations by Marcus Aurelius, one of the most famous Stoics. He's the last of the 5 great emperors of Rome. And it was amazing how he led. He led through philosophy and consistently going back and realizing how he could be a better version. And so I read this and I realized just, it wasn't reality that was making up me. It was me that can dictate reality with the lens I take on it, right? So just as like Maybe you go in to try like prescription glasses, right? It's like, I'm a victim. This sucks. This isn't fair. This isn't right. Like those were all the things I was like manifesting in my life with this team. And maybe it was true, but I could also choose, what a beautiful challenge. I'm going to grow so much. I'm still going to love my teammates. I'm still going to work hard. I'm going to be more creative and intentional than ever. And so after reading that book for about a day, I was like, all right, like it's up to me, because yeah, these things aren't going well, but I also wasn't taking care of my responsibilities, which was the list. And so I was like, all right, 3 weeks, I'm just going to 100% the list. That's all my focus will be, just crossing off the list. So I woke up, the first thing I did was make my bed, first one of the day. You know, something kind of easy, but also something I don't necessarily want to do.
So good.
So I make the bed, I go and meditate, have a plant-strong breakfast, I make a juice, I warm up, go to weights. I would stay late and do conditioning, even though I didn't have a car. So my coach was like, hey, we got to go. I would go home and go run like in the downtown area and do sprints in the park, where it was like more or less freezing outside, but it was like, you know, this is on the list. I said it's important to me, and so it's important for me to make sure I cross it off. And just every day I was going against that. And nothing changed outside. The coach was still, you know, kind of a jerk. The team didn't want anything to do with buying into the goals, and we didn't win. But every day it started to become the best day ever, because it was the joy within me that I was taking responsibility for and holding myself accountable. And these are the things that are important to me. These are things that are going to help me grow. These are things that are going to help me prepare to get back to the national team. And I'm going to do it because I need to do it, and I also want to do it. And so that once again kind of changed my life, where this thought of like the best day ever started to come. And the best day ever, it's not, oh, it's nice, it's beautiful weather, I have a beautiful girlfriend, I have a beautiful home, stocks are going well. It's like I wake up with abundance and gratitude, and I crave those things that are already within my life while working hard to be of greatest value to my community.
So good. How do you recover mentally and physically?
Yeah, a lot of meditation.
Meditation.
What's the adage? Just if you don't have 10 minutes to meditate, you meditate for 15 minutes. And so that's it. When you go within, you can create that space, right? With more space, we have more power to respond rather than react, right? So much reaction going on in the world right now. So many people being pulled emotionally. And I think there's just so much power in being still, just sitting and just observing, not pushing away things, not craving things, not having this this disdain for how things are or these thoughts. It's just observing and observing and observing, coming back to the breath, coming back to the breath, and then being able to respond and create with regards to our highest version, whatever that may be. It's different for everyone, but I like this mantra, what does my highest version look like at this exact moment? And so how much space, how much stillness can I create? And within that space, how do I respond? How can I respond in my highest version? 1 year, a couple of years ago, I was benched and I didn't feel it was right. And I fought a lot of resentment, a lot of frustration. I started to use this mantra, and it was so frustrating, right? I was playing in Berlin. It was like 5, 6, 7, 8,000 people came to watch these games. And I was on the bench, and I feel like I should be on the bench, whatever it may be. But this is something that I learned later that is not completely in my control, right? My ability to be chosen in the starting lineup. And so this mantra in playoffs, after half a season being resentful, helped me so much. And I repeat to myself, what does my highest version look like at this exact moment? And usually the answer was clapping as loud as I can and like screaming and shouting sincerely for the guys on the court to do well, right? Because a lot of athletes, maybe if you're the second person, you know you're on the bench, it's easy to clap, right? But when you expect to be on the court and you're not, you're going to have that resentment, that frustration. It's going to be so easy just to pout. But we can have these little cues to remind ourselves, what does my highest version look like at this exact moment? And then from there, we can align ourselves for action or don't.
What do you think is the driving force that initially and continually pushes you to be a champion?
Yeah, so I would, people are too kind to me. They're like, oh, you're so like courageous, you're so tough. And it's just like, a lot of it actually came from like my insecurity, right? I just wanted to fit in. I just wanted to be loved. I wanted to feel whole. And through most of my journey, I wasn't really aware that the wholeness starts and ends from within. And so a lot of my success, I think, has come through insecurity and not wanting to quit, because then I wouldn't be Dustin Watten, athlete. Then I wouldn't be Dustin Watten, USA. Now it's just this abundance and curiosity for being better. How grateful am I to have this window where I have the opportunity to be the best athlete I can be? What different edges can I take? What if I juice? What if I meditate? What if I hire a visualization coach? Oh, what else could I do? What about sleep? Maybe not just getting in bed on a certain time, but like taking lines maybe before bed, meditating before bed. And so it's just like this curious game where it's like, how great can I be? And I love it. And so I think initially it was this really insecure, hurt boy that just wanted to be loved, that just wanted to fit in. And I was able to find that love through sports, whether it was real, genuine, or not. And now kind of doing the shadow work through meditation, it's just like, wow, I'm already whole. And because I'm whole, I can just keep on going. And I can fail without stress. And I can play those games without focusing on failing. Because when I focus on failure or the possibility, now I get a little tight. Now I get a little worried. Now I start sweating, you know? And just knowing going into these games, like I work with my visualization coach and we talk about how grateful I am for all the things in life and abundance, and going in like full rather than going to the game like, if I play good, then I'll be full, then I'll be loved. And so now the push to greatness is just this fun adventure for just pushing myself. And it's like, how great can I be knowing I only have this limited time left? And whether I kind of talk about it now, it's like this Olympic consciousness. So I'm with the national team right now, I'm going to the Olympics, and more or less, like, I don't think I'll make the Olympic team. Like, I'm the second guy, and usually they just take one for our position. But when they make that decision, it's not completely in my control. I can be the best version I can be, this Olympic version, and that's the most important thing, that each and every day, not only do I put my best foot forward, but as intentional as possible, as mindful as possible, I'm creative as possible in my preparation to be great, and I'm the best teammate as possible. And at the end of the day, it's not this false dichotomy where it's like, you're Olympian or you're not. It's like, I'm already an Olympian leading up to it. And then if I'm not, then I'm going to hug my teammates and just be like, crush it. And knowing that I did the best I could.
And you don't think that, you know, feeling grateful makes, because it sounds like you're talking about attachment too. Mm-hmm. So it sounds like you're attached, but through gratitude, but you're kind of detached at the same time, so you don't get disappointed.
Well, I want to be the best version I can be, the best teammate I can be, the best libero I can be. But knowing too, it's like I can prepare as great as I can, but going through the game, there's maybe just some lucky plays that I can't do anything about. And so at the end of the game, the stat sheet says like bad, right? If you look at the stats, like, oh, he had a terrible game. Or I can have like a perfect game on stats, but everything was just really easy and I wasn't actually really precise. Or I can play the best game possible, but we lose. And I think the bare minimum, we have to surrender to what happened. If we can be a little more courageous, we can accept what happened. And if we can be really courageous, we can love what happened. Because when we love what has happened, then we can learn from it. And we're consistently learning, right? In my journey, at least, people always ask me, like, what are your favorite seasons? It's like, favorite seasons are when I was really lonely and I wanted to quit. Favorite season was when nobody really liked me and I went to meditation. Because all these darker moments, I went within, being alone, right? It was such a benefit to be alone, not having friends or family to say, ooh, oh, I can't believe that happened. Oh my gosh, I'm so sad for you. It's like I had experienced it alone and like find a way. And so even these like difficult moments are kind of this seek discomfort movement. Looking back in the past, it's like these are like the greatest catalysts to like growth, like real, true growth where we evolve as a person and we never come back.
Who has been your biggest inspiration and why?
I think cliche, but just my parents, you know, just a simple act of, at the end of the games, they would say, we were proud how you competed, or we weren't proud how you competed. And there was a lot of times they said, we weren't proud how you competed. Like I was a punk, and through that insecurity, right? Through the insecurity, I had attachments to the outcome. And if the outcome didn't manifest in me winning, me playing well, I would throw a fit. You know, maybe I'd curse on the court, or if I was playing beach, I would like punt the ball after I lost. And, you know, after enough times hearing it, I started to realize that like it didn't necessarily matter if I won or if I played well, but how I did it. And still the same. It's like If I'm Olympian, great. If I'm not Olympian, okay. But it's like, how did I do it? How did I approach each day? How did I compete? How did I prepare myself? Was I a good teammate or was I a selfish teammate, right? It's real easy to gossip and talk, if the other player isn't playing well, but can I support him, like really, truly support him? Or like with younger players coming up, like the younger players can take my spot, but you know what? I want to support them because they were where I used to be and I didn't have that support. So it doesn't make sense. I want to support them. I want to empower them. I want to enrich their career, even if it means them taking my spot. And so it's about how we do things. And I'm so grateful I learned that lesson from my parents.
So special. Thanks so much for tuning in. Love, Gianna and
Dustin Watten.